Are you ready to uncover your retirement solution? Learn more as Jeremy, Keil, and his guests guide you along the path of retirement and reveal the 5 steps you need to take to solve your retirement puzzle. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Retirement Revealed with Jeremy Keil. Today, Jeremy has a great guest on, and that is Marcia Mantell. Good morning, Jeremy. How are you?
Doing very well, thanks. How you doing, Eric?
I'm excited. You've got a guest, and
it's fun.
which makes my job super easy because you have incredible conversation skills, and you brought her on for a very specific reason, I know, and I get to learn that just alongside the audience. But how did you get connected with Marcia? That's my first question.
Yeah, well, you know me, Eric. You know I'm always reading, always trying to learn different things about retirement planning, Social Security, tax planning, all kinds of things. Reading this great magazine, this great article pops up. It's called Making Smarter Decisions is Critical to Mitigating Retirement Risks Women Face, which I think is pretty advisor-focused there. There's a lot of big words, but that just shows how smart Marcia is, and we love that. But I read the article, I thought, this is gold. Whoever's author is knows what they're talking about. So I reached out to her on LinkedIn. We scheduled a call because I just wanted to learn more about her, and she agreed to be on our show. And the thought here with the podcast we're titling this one, Making Smarter Decisions to Improve Social Security for Women. And that's great. Let's have her on and try to get Social Security to do even better things for the women out there.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I'll just jump in before we bring Marcia on, that this is something I just faced a couple days ago because I've been learning from you for a while, but delaying Social Security, and I know you'll probably touch on that today, but that's something that I hadn't thought of for my mother-in-law, and so we reached out, and unfortunately, she started taking her Social Security pretty much day one, and that was a couple of years ago because I completely forgot. I forgot how old she was. Don't tell her I said that.
Well, that's good. She's young then. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. But I was like, doggone it all, because she didn't need to take it early. She didn't need to take it. She could have delayed and actually gotten some benefit from delaying. So I'll let you get Marcia on the show here and let you guys do the thing, but it's interesting that this came up today.
Yeah. Well, it just shows how important the planning is ahead of time for you. I like to say at least that the 82-year-old widows out there are living on the Social Security decision of their 62-year-old husband, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so it just shows how important it is. So let's just bring the expert on. We've got Marcia on the line. Do you mind, Marcia, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Oh, Jeremy, thank you so much for inviting me on. And Eric, I love that story, but sorry to hear mom-in-law claimed a little bit earlier. Yeah. But yes, I'm Marcia Mantell. I have been running my own business for the last 15 years, all about retirement. So I help financial advisors, I help consumers, and I work with large financial firms on their retirement planning, on how to bring retirement income planning and retirement planning more to the people who need it, which are those of us who are going to retire. So I've written a couple of books, I write a blog, and in general, I love everything about retirement and try to bring it to life.
Yeah, well, that's how we connected so incredibly well, because definitely we take an education focus, and I could tell that from the start, reading the article, talking with you. Do you mind just sharing with me? You've got a couple websites, couple books that are out there. We'll get them in the show notes, but I just why don't you tell us how people can find you there?
Oh, well, thank you. Yes. I've been blogging for quite a while, and I have a blog I call Boomer Retirement Briefs. So boomerretirementbriefs.com. And that's where you can read about what some other baby boomers or anyone really 50 and older who's thinking about retirement, what creative and interesting things are boomers doing. Plus, there's a lot of Social Security information in there. And then my books are What's the Deal with Retirement Planning for Women and What's the Deal with Social Security for Women. And while these books are not only for women, the stories and making them relatable, it's very hard when you use generic words. So I use real examples, real people, and real situations that focus or lead in, if you will, with women.
Yeah.
So thanks for asking.
Yeah, I love hearing that. And it seems like every time we meet a couple, there's always one that takes the financial reins. Like it's just their thing and they go for it. And if you just had to pick a stereotype, you would stereotype that it's the man that does it, it's the husband. And sometimes the wife doesn't quite get the focus or take the focus on the financial part of it. And I think that stereotype's actually changing. When I talk to people that are younger in their 50s or so. I think that's starting to change, which is a good thing. But just love the idea that finances affect women even more than men because they're around longer. So good for you for pointing out a lot of these different things that women need to be looking at.
They really do. And, you bring up such an interesting reality between couples, in longtime married couples. There's a real trust that has been built between this married couple. And it's just not so easy. When the husband is maybe so confident and so sure, no, not necessarily right, but so sure of the decisions, the wife is not always in a position where she feels she needs to challenge that. I mean, he's provided well, or however they've worked their marriage to make it work and last. It's built on that foundation of trust. So it isn't about questioning, in a bad way what your husband is thinking, but it is about understanding the implications, because he is making financial decisions and they will affect her in the long run. And you're right, women just, I don't know why, Jeremy, but we just live longer than the guys. My husband has his own personal theory. He thinks we're going to women drive their husbands to the grave earlier. But, he's just so funny. But we do, and it's been forever that women live longer. And it's a long, long time. On average, women who make it to 65 today will live till 89. And that means half of us will live to 89 or longer. Okay, the other half didn't. But further, 25% of us will live till 95.
Oh, amazing.
So that is a really long planning horizon. And if you're going to be living a long time, you need to eat. You need to pay your taxes. You need to have a roof over your head. You need to shop. So you need money. Where's it going to come from?
Absolutely. Well, even too, it seems like the average husband is a few years older than the average wife. So you add on that just the age difference plus then the longevity difference means it's such a huge deal for these ladies.
It really is. Anywhere from, on average 7 to 10 years where, she's living on her own. Now, maybe that would be fun if you were 40, but we're talking about living on your own in your 90s.
Yeah.
So it's a very different equation, and we need to embrace that possibility.
And plan for it. Plan for it ahead of time. The three things you mentioned in the article, which I love for people to know, were called the wage gap, the mom gap, and the widow gap. Could you just talk about how each of those affect women?
Sure. The wage gap is, I think, pretty common to most of us, and that is when you look at the same jobs, men tend to be paid higher than women doing the same job. For white women, we get paid about 82% of for the same job, 82 cents on the dollar. African American and Hispanic women, it's 63 cents on the dollar. So we're talking about just when you start out and then all along your career, women are getting paid less for the same job doing the same kinds of work as their peers of the men. So that means there's less money to spend all along the way, and there's less money to save. It also speaks to, and this is one of the things most people don't know about Social Security, in order to get your benefit, Social Security is going to do a calculation. And it's based on your personal earnings. So when you're earning less all the way through your career, your calculated benefit at retirement is going to be less. It's really quite simple math. So it's less in means less out. And that's the implication of the wage gap.
Right. Well, the chart you had in the book there that showed at least a 10% difference on average.
Yeah, that's best case is a 10% difference.
Yeah.
10% less. Yeah. So it has serious ramifications throughout your earnings years and your retirement years. The mom gap is a little bit different. And the mom gap that I talk about that in popcorn careers. For many of us moms, we bounce in and out of between career and family. Sometimes it's by choice. Sometimes it's because it's necessary. And what this is once a woman has a child or multiple children, becomes a mom, family comes first. And it takes different paths depending on what your opportunities are and what your children need and what your family needs. So the mom gap is when you take time off to be home, to raise, either to bond longer with your babies. A lot of moms wait until kindergarten. It's like, okay, we're going to have children. We'll have 2 or 3 children in a pretty short period of time. And I'll take that time out of work until we get them into school. Well, when you're out of work, that means you're earning 0. And again, going back to what Social Security is going to base your benefit on, if there is no money, no earnings listed, those zeros go into the equation. But you take, 5, 6, 7 years out when your kids are little, then maybe you return to work, but you don't return at the same salary. But then you come out when you have teenagers because they need to, learn to drive and all the things that teenagers go through. Moms are very often home during that era. And then maybe they go back to work part-time, or maybe they don't. Or maybe they need to caregive for an elderly parent or an elderly aunt or uncle. So it's women who are moving in and out of the career and creating this mom gap that, because Social Security's formula is very, very straightforward, it's earnings in, determine payout benefits later. When there are no dollars in, it just really reduces your benefit payment, and significantly.
Yeah.
So that's
it's
the mom
35
gap.
years. Yeah, you got 35 years in the account. You got some zeros in there. It hurts you. It doesn't help you. You just described basically my family situation. My wife chose to stop working with, I was supporting her either way, but she chose to stop working when our oldest was born. Our youngest now is getting to kindergarten. So even if she goes back this specific year, that's 9 years out of the workforce. Chances are it'll be maybe next year. So that's 10 years total of zeros for her.
Right. So she'll either, and she can make them up. So, it's not quite cast in stone, but, we just don't realize that we're making a financial decision when we choose to stay home with our children. What we know is we're losing our immediate paycheck, right? So whatever she was doing before that brought in an income, we're willing to work on that. Okay, I'm going to stop the paycheck, and we can make some trade-offs maybe, or it works fine for us to just live on one salary. And it's so important for moms to be home with their children. When you have that opportunity, it's just a golden opportunity. But we also need to, and it goes back to your comment, Jeremy, about planning. You don't just plan for the loss of income in the current era. It's loss of income in retirement as well. And so long as you go in with your eyes wide open, look, lots of families make this decision. It's all good. But what ends up happening, what I see in the work that I do, is these moms who did exactly what your wife is doing, all of a sudden at 62, 63, 64, they pull down their Social Security statement for the first time and look at it and are stunned. It's like, wait, what happened to all my money? Well, you have 15 years of zeros all in. And you can continue to work longer and you replace some of those zeros, but it is very hard at age 60 to make up 15 zeros with real earnings. In fact, it's generally not possible.
And you can, there's ways you can go and model that on Social Security's website. I'll make sure we get that in the show notes too.
Yes.
So you can take, how is this going to affect you? I do like what you mentioned there about taking care of elderly parents, because a lot of people think about in the mom gap of you're going to take care of the young kids, but it just seems like a lot of society, a lot of families expect, well, if 85, 90-year-old mom and dad has trouble, it's usually not the son that takes care of them. It's oftentimes it's the daughter that adjusts her career to help out with the parents. That seems to be more often than not.
Yeah, it has I would say, for centuries. It's just part of that nurturing. Not that men don't play this role, but it is very funny in my family. I'm the oldest, and I'm the daughter, and I have a younger brother, and he was very quick to say, "Hey, Marcia, if mom and dad need help, I'm fully supporting you."
Thanks. Thanks, bro.
Exactly. It's like, oh, my brother just appointed me to be the caregiver should the need arise. But it is a little bit more of a natural progression of things. It just happens. But if I had to step off my career, Especially in those later years. Sometimes they are your biggest earnings years in some cases, not all. So you are making a financial decision on your own retirement in order to fulfill your obligation to your parents or an elderly relative.
For sure. Well, when you said this mom gap, you calculated the mom gap at 14% of a loss. That's kind of a scenario. So losing 10%.
And that's only
perhaps,
if you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. That's only if you stay out of work for 5 years.
Just 5 years.
That's
my goodness.
Just 5 years. Yeah. So it goes up from there if you're that in and out mom. Yeah, it can end up closer to 25 to 30% less in Social Security income if you do the popcorn, if you're in and out because of family obligations. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then the last one, the widow gap, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but tell us about what the widow gap might be.
Yeah, the widow gap is the result of the decisions your husband has made. So what's important to know about Social Security is, it's interesting, I'm writing another article right now about Social Security's turning 85 in August. And when Social Security first passed in 1935, it was protection for workers. Well, by and large, in 1935, women were not workers. So it just protected the man. It didn't protect his wife, though, if he were to die. So it took a few more years, and then it's called the 1939 amendments brought in, and Congress recognized that, we can't leave, 80-year-old widows out there with no security, no safety net. So it took a few years, but it came into play that widows would be covered by Social Security if their husband predeceased them. So what this says is, if your husband dies first and he was bringing in more Social Security than your own benefit, you get to step into his shoes and you'll get a higher payment. But the condition is it's the amount your husband was claiming. So if hubby claims at age 62, which is the earliest he can claim, that locks in a permanently reduced income benefit that will become yours if you become the widow. So it is a really big decision when your husband claims, even if he's tired, even if he'd rather be retired than working, he can retire. He just can't claim Social Security, without it impacting or potentially impacting his wife if she's the one who becomes a widow. And Jeremy, I just find it stunning that still today, almost a third of men claim Social Security at 62. Now, I can't tell you that they're all married. It's just men and women. They both claim at 62, so they're locking in 25 to 30% permanently reduced income from Social Security because they can't wait to take it.
Yeah.
And
that's 25 to 30% lower than the full retirement age. They could wait. Right? They could wait.
They could wait. Yes. Yeah. And again, if you see it in a plan and see that implication, because not only are you getting less Social Security, which is one piece of the equation, but in order to pay your bills, on a plan, you would see that you're also drawing from your own personal savings at a much higher rate than maybe you had thought you were going to be pulling out. And so it's got multiple layering effect. And if she's the widow, at the end of things, she's the one who really gets cut short with less personal savings because they've used it and less Social Security.
Well, yeah, we've done the math. The difference is it could be 77% higher. Social Security could be 77% higher for the widow, especially depending on whether that first person took it at 62 or all the way at 70. So that's a huge difference. And we're not saying that you have to do that, but 77%, maybe it's worth thinking about trying to figure out what's the best thing for you as a couple, really.
Yeah, that you are spot on, Jeremy. And it sounds really tempting when you see those numbers, like, 77% more in income. Let's do that. But the reality is most people can't wait until 70. They're not working. Their employers don't keep them on. So they do retire more at 66 or 67. But even waiting 1 year longer gives you an 8% bump in your income. So if you're thinking about, should I retire or I really like my job, everything's going well, and you can wait for 1 year after your full retirement age, even that gives you a big boost. So,
Yeah.
It's all good.
Good. Well, we talked about the problems in a way, especially how Social Security affects women with the wage gap, the mom gap, the widow gap. What do you think are some solutions? How do these ladies change things around or just take control of what Social Security could do for them?
Well, the very first thing I think everyone should do is get onto Social Security's website, ssa.gov, and there's an icon right on the homepage called My Social Security. You set up your account. It's a private account. It takes 2 minutes to set this up, and you get your very own statement so that you can see what Social Security is already projecting for you for your income. It shows you every year of your earnings. So, if you do have a few years of earnings, you now know maybe you're only 50. And it's like, oh, right, I took 2 years out when we had the kids back then, or 3 years. Geez, I need to work 3 years longer. So it helps you make decisions and smart decisions and knowledgeable decisions. So that's the first thing. Get your statement, look at it, make decisions from it. The second, if you are part of a married couple, you need to talk to each other. Not always that easy, right? You're busy and you've got many other things to talk about, but it is planning for retirement. It takes a little bit of work, a little bit of conversation. And then if you can run the numbers so you see what we're talking about here, even on your Social Security statement, it shows you how much money you get at your full retirement age, which is the anchor age. That's between 66 and 67 for all of us now. So you see how much you get there, how much less you get at 62, and how much more you'll get at 70. So Social Security arms you with those three pieces of estimates and those three pieces of information. So, know that, understand that. And then I think you probably do this with your clients, Jeremy, is talk about how much you're really going to spend in retirement. Retirement is not cheap. It is also not free. So, we really have to start putting just some high level numbers together. And if you're spending, X dollars in retirement just to keep your household afloat, but you're getting less than X from Social Security, which most of us will, well, there's a gap. How are you going to pay for the rest? That's the planning piece. And that's critically important. The other thing I'd say for women, and this applies to men as well, if you're divorced or if you're widowed, you need to know what your options are with Social Security. They're different than if you're that, quote, traditionally married couple. So if you're divorced, you have very likely an ability to claim on your ex so long as that marriage was 10 years or longer. So lots of divorced people don't know that. Widows don't often know that they have a decision to make and they can claim a lesser benefit early and then switch to the higher benefit later. So in other words, take their own benefit maybe first and then switch to the survivor higher benefit later. Or it might work the other way. Take a survivor benefit first and let your own benefit grow until age 70, where you get the maximum amount. But there's some decision making to go on here. So those are a few of the things that I think are so important for women to get in this game and really think about their benefit and their overall income need.
Mm-hmm. Well, running the numbers is so incredibly important. Running the numbers with someone that knows what they're talking about and doing is so incredibly important. I love the idea of figuring out Social Security, different things, and do a lot of research. And one thing you turned me on to was this NSSA designation. To tell you, Marcia, I signed up for it. I'm taking the classes next week. But tell us a little bit about that. What is this designation about Social Security?
Yeah, this is, I looked for a designation or some type of, expert training to make sure I was really sure what I was, researching. So the National Social Security Advisor designation is a professional accredited designation for financial advisors or those of us in the financial education world, where you get in-depth training about Social Security, what it's for, how it's used, how the calculations work, so that we can better educate the public and the clients so that they're making good decisions. There are a couple of levels of the classes as well. There's the foundation level, and then you take a test. And then I've taken the advanced class as well. And that's where you really get into more of the nuts and bolts of the nuances around Social Security. It's incredibly complicated. I mean, I have the law book sitting in my office, and they're 4,900 pages of law text that is today the Social Security Act. So it is very big. Yeah. We won't learn all 4,900 pages in the certification, Jeremy. So don't let me scare you off there.
One day. Well, just shows how important it is. We talk to people about Social Security all the time, and just about everyone walks in with this preconceived notion of I'm taking it at 62, or I'm waiting till my full retirement because I want the most at my full retirement. Well, did you know your most is not at your full retirement? Right. It just shows that you can't go on what you've heard. You've got to go based on the numbers. And those numbers are looking at things together, husband and wife, the spouses together on it, and work with someone that knows what they're talking about. I don't know how many times I've seen somebody take a Social Security amount because they've just did what their brother did, or their advisor said, oh, whatever you want to do. I've heard that from advisors. I'll just tell them what they want to hear. No, sometimes what they need to hear is, here's what the numbers say, and let's do the math and help you figure it out. Or two, there's so many things that people might be missing out on when we're talking to, especially anyone that walks in on their own. We tell them, even if they're coming in as a couple, actually, we tell them, we're not therapists, but we are going to ask you about your past relationships. It's amazing what benefits are out there. Just last week, we had someone, he was a man, he came in, and we started talking about these different things, and turns out he's widowed, and then also turns out that his current advisor did not tell him he could start his survivor Social Security at 66. Well, now he's 71. He missed out on 4 years of survivor Social Security. I don't know what it could have. It could have been 60,000. Could have been $100,000. He missed out because he didn't know. Maybe his advisor didn't know. Maybe his advisor didn't tell him that. And we've had several times too. People come in, they're single. We start asking questions, and we preface it saying, "Hey, this is important for you. Trust us. We're just going to ask some things. Again, not therapists, but just let's ask about some past relationships." And we found out, oh yeah, you were married for 10 years. 40 years ago, you got divorced. Your ex-spouse died. You're eligible for the survivor benefit from your ex-spouse, or you're eligible for the ex-spouse benefit if you are still, if they're still alive, you're still not married. It's just amazing, these benefits that are there, that you just have to go and find them.
It's so true. And what you're describing, it applies to men as well, but these laws are there to protect women. Because again, back in the day, it was the women who were left as widows and such. And yeah, it's so fascinating. People go, no, I was married to that guy in the 1970s. It doesn't matter. No, it matters. It really does. Oh, wow. Yeah. That's so disappointing amazing. For that gentleman who missed out on 4 years of benefits that he was rightly entitled to.
He was. It's too late. It's really too late. I thought it was too late. I double checked, and actually I called into the NSSA to say, hey, I'm signing up. Can you give me a quick bit of advice? And they confirmed it, how it worked out.
Wow. Well, good for you for calling.
Yeah. Well, you don't always know it all. And so you got to go trust some other people that have taken the time to learn it. Yeah, well, we've got to start wrapping things up, and we're going to make sure everyone's got access in the show notes to how to find your book, What's the Deal with Retirement Planning for Women, the Social Security for Women book, your blog, and things like that. But if you wouldn't mind finishing up on something that we talked about earlier before the call, you and I had a call ahead of time, and it seems like when you're talking with consumers, when I'm talking with clients, the one bit of advice or one bit of planning that they go through with Social Security is just to figure out, what's my break even? What's my break even on deciding to wait on Social Security? And you've got just a great way to approach that. Would you mind finishing with just going through that part?
No, I don't mind at all. As you know from our conversation, I am not at all a fan of this idea of break even with Social Security. Social Security has one and only one purpose, and that is to deliver a modest amount of monthly income for you and your spouse when you're in retirement. It's monthly income. It is not an investment. So I think what you're referring to, Jeremy, is when we were chatting, I was saying, you don't look to break even on your homeowner's insurance, right? Or your car insurance. I've lived in a house now for, 35 years. And I think maybe one time we needed to tap homeowners insurance for a ice dam that happened in the winter. And that was it. Well, we've paid in now, as you can imagine, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and maybe we got $10,000 out. But I'm not going to go and complain to the insurance company that I haven't broken even. It's the same idea. Social Security is insurance. It's insurance that you will live in retirement, in old age, and have a modest paycheck coming in. So it isn't about breaking even. It's about getting the best amount that works for you for monthly income throughout a long retirement.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. I loved when you said that earlier. I thought I've got to take that approach because I haven't quite. I've tried to maybe combat it and say, well, let's your break even amount. Let's talk the numbers. But it's just a different approach. Social Security is really old age insurance, if you want to think of it that way. So let's approach it.
And that's actually what it's called.
Yeah.
Old Age and Survivors Insurance. That is the formal name of the program. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, good. Awesome. Well, thank you, Marcia, for being on here. We've loved talking with you. I'm sure everyone is far more educated. I'm more educated from listening to you here. I know Eric certainly enjoys having you on. Thank you, Marcia, for being here on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Jeremy. This was really a pleasure.
I want to say thank you to both of you. Jeremy, obviously, thank you for bringing Marcia on. Marcia, I can tell you, he's had some great guests on before, but you are the most passionate guest I've heard. I mean, obviously, this is something that is near and dear to your heart, and that you are an educator in your soul, right? Am I wrong there? Or am I right?
You're spot on. No, yeah. Eric, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being here. And again, Jeremy, thank you for bringing her on. What a great connection.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, this is great.
You bet. And the last thank you always goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast with Jeremy Keil. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Jeremy comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And let's face it, this is the podcast to share. If you've got anybody that's getting close to that age, we were talking before the podcast, and I shared with Marcia that I have a family member that, you know what, if I had known this 3 years ago, just 3 years ago, I would have been able to help her navigate when to take Social Security, because she didn't need to take it as early as she did, and she's really missing out on some amazing benefits. So please share this podcast with friends and family that are approaching that timeline. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Keil Financial Partners, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. Click on the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit retirement-revealed.com to learn more. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Keil Financial Partners. Keil Financial Partners does not provide legal, accounting, or tax advice. Consult your attorney or tax professional. Representatives have general knowledge of the Social Security tenets. For complete details on your situation, contact the Social Security Administration. Keil Financial Partners is a part of the Thrivent Advisor Network, a registered investment advisor. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.